Now, the population of England and Wales has grown faster in the past decade than for any other period since records began. Figures released today by the Office for National Statistics, the results in effect of last year's census we're talking about, show that England and Wales have a population of just over 56 million people, a rise of 7% between the years 2001 and 2011. Around 55% of that growth, around 2.1 million people, due to migration to the UK. Tower Hamlets in East London is the fastest growing local authority, an increase there more than 26%. The figures also show there are 900,000 more people aged 65 or older in England and Wales, with growth among the over 90s particularly strong, according to the ONS. Plenty for us to discuss and lots of figures for us to start to unpick with Glenn Watson, who's the Director of the England and Wales Census. Glenn, good evening. Thanks for coming in. Well, the headline figure is what always gets attention first of all. And just to really underline the importance of that figure, which is that we're looking at the strongest growth on record. Is that is absolutely what you found?
Yeah, that's right. We started doing censuses all the way back in 1801, so in 210 years of census taking, this is the biggest growth in the population over any 10-year period at 3.7 million, as you said, 7% growth for England and Wales.
And just to get the driving force behind that, I mentioned migration there. What are the factors that feed into that growth?
Well, growth really in the population can only come from people living longer, more people being born, or people coming into the country. So we've got a little bit of all of that going on. We've got more people over 60, we've got particularly strong growth in the over 90s, 15% more 65 pluses than there were 10 years ago. We've got more people being born, so we've got a 400,000 increase in the number of under fives in the country compared to 10 years ago. That's a 13% growth. And we've got more people in the middle of the population as well, so particularly strong in the people in their 20s, where we've got 1 million more or so compared to 10 years ago.
And not just interesting figures, though they are very interesting, because of course they should be translating into areas of policy for the government. They've got very big implications, for example, for social care and other areas of policy. So the results of the census in that way are not just matters of statistical interest.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, there's two things I'd say. One is that this affects the money that gets distributed by central government to local councils, why there's a lot of interest in these figures from local authorities up and down the country. But also, even within local authorities, for people planning things like bus routes, school places, hospital beds, care facilities for the elderly, all of these things are really going to be scrutinising these population figures carefully. So these are going to be very, very valuable for years to come.
We look at the figures you've released today and they'll take a long time for people to go through in some detail, and yet there's more behind the scenes, isn't there? There's more that you will release as the year goes on. What can people expect beyond the figures that we've had today?
Well, these figures are just population by age, by gender, and for every local authority in the country. Later on in the year, just before Christmas, we'll be publishing the results from all of the census questions. So at small areas of geography, so for 100 or so households, you'll be able to see what the patterns were by ethnicity, by national identity, for employment questions, health questions, characteristics of the accommodation that people live in, the languages spoken. So all of these statistics are going to be available later on in the year and are going to be massively important for people setting policy, for people trying to identify the needs of local communities.
And just a thought about the planning, because this is obviously a once-in-a-decade event. Are you already planning for the next one in 9 years' time? Is that already underway?
Well, the planning for this one started back in about 2003. This is a complex and time-consuming process. And yes, we are already looking at some of the options for what happens in 2021.
Glenn, it's very good to talk to you, and we'll be looking again at the figures in more detail later on. But Glenn Watson, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.